last 4 years. And I happen to think the state of New Hampshire and the people of our country, we need change. We need common sense. We need Donald J. Trump back in the White House, not more of the same broken policies. So let's just compare the policies, the proposals of Kamala Harris. When she's not copying from us, what is she actually saying that she wants to do for the people of New Hampshire? Well, number one, she's bragging. She's bragging that she wants to raise your taxes. She's going around saying that the Trump tax cuts that put more money in your pocket to the tune of thousands of dollars per family, she wants to get rid of those things and raise your taxes. We already know she wants to sick 87,000 IRS bureaucrats after the people of New Hampshire, and she's going to double down on those policies. She's telling us she is. Meanwhile, Donald J. Trump, you know what he thinks? He thinks you ought to keep more of your hard-earned money. Which is why he said we're not going to tax overtime, we're going to stop taxing Social Security, and we're going to let the American people keep more of their hard-earned money. You know, I grew up in a place that's cold, not as cold as New Hampshire. I'll tell you, I got off the plane today and I looked at my wife. By the way, isn't my wife beautiful? Thank you, honey, for campaigning with me. She's my best friend, and it's great to go around the country and get to do this with your best friend by your side. But I get off the plane and I say, honey, it is cold out here. And then we're driving, and like 5 minutes after we get in the cars, we're driving here, I see like a 3-year-old in T-shirts and shorts, and I'm like, the people in New Hampshire are tougher than I am. But, you know, because I grew up in a family where we often struggled with money, and because I grew up in a place that does often get very cold in the winter, there were times when my mamaw, the woman who raised me, would sometimes say, look, we don't have the money to turn on the heat tonight. We're going to throw a few extra blankets on the bed, and that's how we dealt with a cold winter night. Now, Donald J. Trump and I believe that in this country, we are bountiful and prosperous enough where every American family, so long as they work hard and play by the rules, they ought to be able to turn their heat on in the middle of a cold winter night. And that's why one of the most important comparisons between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris is Kamala Harris wants to buy oil and gas from tin pot dictators all over the world. Donald J. Trump and I want to drill, baby, drill. We got plenty of it right here. Let's get it out of the ground with our own people. And speaking of cold, I know we've got some folks. We've obviously got an incredible crowd in here. I know we got some folks outside who couldn't get in. I believe they can hear us because we put some speakers out there. We just want to tell you, we love you all. We're grateful that you came, and get out there and vote on Tuesday. And let's just talk about the stakes. Look, we've talked about the stakes in this election. Let's talk about how important it is to get out there and vote, because the only way that we're going to switch out the corrupt leadership in Washington with a president who is fit to lead this great nation is if we get out there and vote. And so I'm going to make a request of every single person in this room, but also those who are listening outside. I want all of you to get out there and vote 10 times. This guy up here, he's like, this is not a Kamala Harris event. We only vote once here. We do it the legal way. Here is how. We're going to vote 10 times the legal way. I want you to get yourself to the polls on Tuesday, and I want you to take 9 of your friends and family with you. That's how we vote 10 times. Because I think the biggest difference between Kamala Harris and Donald J. Trump, it's not actually just the public policy. There are so many issues where Kamala Harris has doubled down on bad policies that make life unaffordable and make the American dream less accessible. But with all those policy disagreements, I actually think the biggest difference between Kamala Harris and Donald J. Trump is that Kamala Harris, instead of trying to persuade all of you, instead of trying to claim that she's the right candidate, she's spending these last few days on the campaign trail, her and all of her buddies at the leadership levels of the Democratic Party, and they're basically attacking their fellow citizens. We saw this when Joe Biden, Kamala Harris's boss, called half of America garbage for thinking that Joe Biden, Kamala Harris did a bad job. You see this when Tim Walz, Kamala Harris's running mate, calls people fascists for showing up at a patriotic rally where we celebrate this country and talk about changing its leadership. You see this when Kamala Harris and all of her surrogates call people racist for believing that America ought to have a southern border. And here's my message to all of our fellow Americans. We know you're struggling, and we know that you deserve better leadership. But I will never, and Donald J. Trump will never, call our fellow citizens garbage. We are not garbage for thinking Kamala Harris has done a bad job. But while we're not garbage for thinking that Kamala Harris has done a bad job, I think in a couple days the voters in New Hampshire are going to take out the trash in Washington, D.C., and that person's name is Kamala Harris.